The first moment something snapped was not with a shout but with silence. It happened on Thanksgiving Day, right at the dinner table Marian Holloway once called hers. The cranberry sauce hadn't even settled when her daughter-in-law, Brooke, leaned across the table, grabbed the serving spoon from Marian's hand, and said with a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes, "You've had enough, Grandma." The air shifted. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversation stalled. Even the baby, usually babbling in his high chair, went still as if he understood something sacred had just been broken. But her son, Andrew, didn't say a word. He didn't flinch. He didn't look at his mother. He stared down into his glass of wine as if the answer to everything might be floating in the merlot. Brooke placed the spoon down like she'd done something noble, wiped her hands, and poured more wine into Andrew's glass. "Some of us still have an appetite," she said, her laugh bouncing off the walls and falling flat. Marian folded her napkin slowly, carefully. Her fingers trembled, but no one could tell. She adjusted the sleeve of her cardigan as if she'd just remembered something in the oven. "Excuse me," she said softly. No one stopped her. No one looked up. She walked away from the table she had once sanded and stained herself, down the hallway with moss-green walls she'd painted after their wedding, past the family portraits Brooke had replaced with designer mirrors, into the kitchen, where the hum of the dishwasher filled the silence that had followed her. She opened the back door. Cold November air brushed against her face. She didn't cry. She just breathed. And for the first time in years she felt something beginning to return to her, something steady, something sharp. The house had once been Marian's greatest act of love, not a gift wrapped in ribbon but in foundation and drywall, paid for with 30 years of teaching, saving, and patching together budgets. She and her late husband, George, bought it when Andrew was 7, a modest 2-story with creaky stairs and an oak tree out back that he used to climb until his jeans were permanently stained green. When Andrew got married, Marian wanted to give him and Brooke a foundation, something permanent to begin their life. So she gave them the house. At least, that's how they told it at parties. But the truth was more careful, more legal, more protected. Before she signed anything, Marian sat down with a lawyer, an old friend named Deborah Klein, who had traded teaching civics for practicing elder law. Together, they structured the arrangement meticulously, a revocable life estate. In plain terms, Marian still owned the home, she just let them live in it. She retained the right to live there for life, to reclaim ownership, and to revoke the agreement if necessary. Her name never left the deed. Andrew never read the fine print. Brooke barely skimmed it before flipping the page and commenting on curtain colors. "It's just a formality, right?" Brooke had said, tossing her hair back. Marian had signed last. Her pen left a gentle pressure on the signature line, just enough to say, "I'm giving, but I'm not surrendering." At first things were pleasant enough. Brooke redecorated. Marian moved into the guest suite with the lilac wallpaper she picked herself. They had an understanding, or so she thought. 7 years passed. The oak tree in the backyard aged quietly, but so did Marian. And somewhere between the new light fixtures and the silent glances at dinner, Marian realized what had really changed. This wasn't a shared home anymore. It was their house. And she was just someone lucky enough to still be allowed in it. For now. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been too obvious, too loud. No, Brooke erased Marian the same way one fades pencil lines from a page. Slowly, deliberately. It began with the bookshelf. Marian's walnut bookshelf, once filled with poetry collections and classic novels, disappeared overnight. In its place stood a chrome shelving unit with color-coordinated knickknacks and books no one had ever read. Then the quilt from her honeymoon vanished. Brooke claimed it was too worn and said she had donated it. The framed photo of Andrew's 3rd birthday party, the one with cake smeared across his cheeks, was replaced by abstract art that looked like static. Even the scent of the house changed. Once cinnamon, lemon oil, and brewed coffee. Now it smelled like lavender disinfectant and eucalyptus candles from some influencer's blog. "They're just upgrades," Brooke said when Marian asked about the missing chair from her reading corner. "We're trying to elevate the space." Marian said nothing, but she started taking notes. It wasn't just things, it was language. Brooke no longer called it our home. She called it the renovation, the Holloway residence, my kitchen. The guest suite, Marian's suite, became the back room. The thermostat password was changed. Her favorite tea disappeared from the pantry. Furniture was rearranged without warning. And every now and then, just loud enough for the neighbors or delivery drivers to hear, Brooke would drop a little reminder. So not every 70-year-old gets to live rent-free in a home like this. She should be grateful. Marian didn't argue. She just added another line to her yellow legal pad. It lived in her nightstand, under a novel she pretended to read. The list grew longer. She called it, "What They Think I Don't Notice." Marian knew something most people forgot. Years of teaching taught her this. It's not the loud ones you should fear. It's the quiet ones. The ones who pay attention. So she began documenting. Not in rage, not even out of spite, just discipline, precision. The way she once graded essays with a red pen and a steady hand. She started with the receipts. The ones Brooke had thrown out from the pharmacy when Marian's medication plan mysteriously changed. Marian dug through the trash and retrieved them, highlighted discrepancies, circled co-pays she never authorized. Next came the emails. She printed the one Brooke sent to the Hoe, changing the household's primary mailing address to her own inbox. She took photos of missing items: her reading chair, her mother's brooch, even the garden tools that had slowly vanished from the shed out back. She installed a camera too, hidden neatly inside an old mantel clock, just one. She didn't need a dozen. One truth, well-timed, would be enough. Every item went into a binder, a thick one, dividers labeled with tabs like financial manipulation, verbal coercion, unauthorized access, medical interference. One day she found a sticky note on the fridge in bold Sharpie. "Don't forget your memory meds." The smiley face had devil horns sketched in. She peeled it off, folded it in half, and tucked it under coercion tactics. Marian never confronted Brooke, not yet. She needed timing. She needed certainty. And most of all, she needed to remain underestimated just a little longer. Because when you know they think you're weak, that's when they tell on themselves. If Brooke wanted a helpless old woman, Marian decided to give her one. She began misplacing things on purpose, left a grocery list in the freezer, burned a batch of toast just enough to raise suspicion, forgot the name of the neighbor's dog during small talk. Nothing dramatic, just small cracks. She started wearing her cardigan inside out on accident, let her phone ring on silent, claiming she didn't hear it. Brooke, of course, noticed. She hovered more, spoke slower, louder, like addressing a confused child. "You okay, Marian?" Brooke asked one morning, cocking her head. "You put sugar in the salt jar again." Marian smiled faintly. "Oh dear, must be my age." That afternoon, a new post-it appeared on the fridge. "Memory meds don't forget." Same devil horn smiley. Perfect. She folded the note and placed it carefully into her binder under psychological undermining. Then she made an appointment with Dr. Patel, a neurologist recommended by her lawyer Deborah. No one knew, she drove herself alone. The tests were long memory, logic, reaction time. She completed every puzzle with calm focus, every verbal cue without hesitation. At the end, Dr. Patel smiled. "Your cognition is excellent, no signs of decline whatsoever." Marian asked for it in writing. 3 copies. That night, Brooke slid a manila envelope across the kitchen counter. "Just sign this. Power of attorney stuff. Standard." Marian uncapped the pen, paused, then slid it back. "I'd like someone to review it first, just in case my memory's slipping." She smiled. Brooke didn't. Marian hadn't gone looking for it. She was simply trying to find her mother's silver carving knife, the one they'd used every Thanksgiving since 1978. It should have been in the back of the garage inside the old cedar box. But instead, tucked beneath the stack of Brooke's abandoned side hustle boxes and broken autumn reads, she found an envelope taped to an appraisal folder. The handwriting wasn't hers. The signature at the bottom definitely wasn't. Inside were photographs of her jewelry, her pearl brooch, the locket George gave her after Andrew was born, each with handwritten values and a forged signature authorizing their sale. She stared at the paper for a long time, not out of disbelief but out of a calm, simmering recognition. Brooke hadn't just tried to erase her. She was selling her off. Piece by piece. Marian didn't scream. She didn't call the police. She simply took photos, scanned the paperwork, printed a new tab divider for her binder, forgery and theft. She placed it neatly behind medical interference. Then she returned to the kitchen, pulled the pie dough from the fridge, and began weaving the lattice crust like she had done for 40 years. Her hands were steady. Her humming was low. The house smelled like cinnamon and rising consequences. And somewhere beneath the gravel where roses once bloomed, a waterproof flash drive already waited buried just below the surface, packed tight with screenshots, audio files, and silent truths. The garden might have looked dead to everyone else. But Marian knew better. She was planting something far more resilient. Thanksgiving arrived wrapped in fog, the kind of morning where sky and ground blur together, and everything feels like it's holding its breath. Marian rose early. Before Brooke's juicer, before Andrew's news podcast, before the house began its daily hum of curated routine. Her dress was laid out the night before, deep plum velvet, long sleeves, the kind George always said made her look like royalty with a plan. In the kitchen, Brooke was already in full performance mode. Lip gloss shining, apron tied tight over a matching yoga set. She looked Marian up and down and smirked. "Well, that's a bold choice," she said. "We're hosting, not haunting." Marian smiled faintly. "Then I'll be quiet as a ghost." By 2 p.m., guests began arriving. Neighbors. Colleagues. Brooke's Pilette's friend with the camera-ready smile. Marian moved through the kitchen in silence, basting the turkey, checking the timer. When praised, she nodded. When thanked, she let it pass. Every detail was ready. At 5 sharp, the meal was served. Stuffing golden. Cranberry tart with orange zest. The pie cooling by the window like a silent witness. Marian took her place at the end of the table where the matriarch once sat, now reduced to afterthought. Small talk dripped like syrup. Brooke spoke of renovation plans that hadn't even been approved. Andrew barely spoke at all. The baby sneezed, someone passed a napkin. Then it happened. Marian reached for a second helping of potatoes. Halfway there, Brooke's hand shot out and grabbed the serving spoon. With a smile sharp enough to slice, she said, "You've had enough, Grandma." Silence. Forks hovered, chewing slowed. Brooke let out a nervous laugh and added, "She's watching her starches, remember? Doctor's orders." Marian set her fork down. No tremble this time. She picked up her wine glass, let the stem rest between her fingers, and took a slow breath. Then she stood. The chair scraped across the floor loud, deliberate. "Actually," she said, voice smooth as the merlot, "I haven't even started." And right on cue, the doorbell rang. A man in a black coat stepped in, envelope in hand. "Marian Holloway?" he asked. Brooke blinked. "I'm a registered process server. You've been formally served." The room froze. Andrew stood so fast his chair tipped backward. "What is this?" Marian took a sip of wine. "Oh, just something I've been cooking longer than that turkey." By sunset, the guests had scattered like startled birds. The wine glasses sat half empty. Forks abandoned mid-bite. No one touched the pie. Brooke had locked herself in the guest bathroom. Andrew stood stiff in the corner, staring at the eviction notice like it had arrived in a foreign language. Marian didn't speak again. She didn't need to. The man in the coat had spoken for her, and the law now stood behind every word she didn't shout. That night, after the last car pulled out of the driveway, Marian walked the perimeter of the house in silence. She ran her hand along the siding she once painted herself, past the garden where roses used to bloom before Brooke buried them under gravel. At 9 a.m., the next morning, the locksmith arrived. By noon, every lock had been changed. Front door, back gate, garage, all new, all hers. She held the new key in her palm, heavy with finality. It gleamed in the sun, smooth and warm. She slipped it on to the old braided lanyard George used to tease her about, the one he said made her look like a school bus driver. Today, it felt like armor. Inside, she lit a cinnamon candle Brooke once called Too Vintage and placed it in the center of the mantel. The scent drifted slowly through the house. A scent of memory. But not nostalgia. Restoration. That night, she walked room to room barefoot on the hardwood floors, flipping on light switches, opening blinds. No shadows followed her. No voices behind doors. No one watching. Just her. And the house that remembered who it really belonged to. Marian thought it was over. But then came the letter, certified, crisp and smug. Filed by Andrew Holloway. A legal petition contesting the revocable life estate. Not for Brooke, not in her name. This time it was Andrew, her son, her only child. The same boy who once cried when he forgot his lunchbox in 2nd grade. The same boy who helped her rake leaves every fall without being asked. Now he was suing her for control of the house she still legally owned. The courtroom was pale and polished, the kind of place where truths can't hide and history has a witness. Marian sat beside Deborah, her lawyer and old friend. Across from them, Andrew sat with a woman in a slate gray suit who never once looked up from her notes. Marian didn't bring notes. She brought memory, resolve, and a binder. When the judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes like frost, called her name, Marian rose. She didn't tremble. "I gave my son and his wife this house," she began, voice steady, as a gesture of love. "Not a surrender of rights, not an invitation to be erased from the life I helped build." She paused, let the silence settle. "I've lived through caretaking masked as control, gaslighting wrapped in concern. I've been told I was forgetful while they rewrote my name out of every room. But I am not gone. I am not fragile. And I am not finished." There was no reaction from Andrew. Not even a blink. When the judge asked if he wished to speak, he looked down at the table and said, "No, Your Honor." The decision came swiftly. All legal documents upheld. Petition denied. Full rights retained. Marian didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just let out the quietest breath, a weight leaving the room. Outside, the air was cold and clean. Deborah handed her a cup of coffee. "You're free," she said. And Marian finally believed it. Back at home, she pulled out a handwritten check. $50,000 made out to the local Women's Legal Defense Fund. "For the next woman," she said, placing it in Deborah's hand, "who refuses to be erased." The house didn't feel empty. It felt full finally. Not with things, not with noise, but with presence, with peace. Marian sat at the head of the long dining table, the same chair Brooke once tried to replace with something less dated. She had sanded and restained it herself just last spring. Every curve spoke of quiet resilience. Around her, 12 women shared a meal, some from the local shelter, some from her adult literacy class at the library. They had stories that didn't always get told. Women pushed out by husbands, dismissed by sons, talked over by systems that didn't see them. But today they passed stuffing and green beans like communion. Someone brought homemade biscuits. Another cranberry sauce with orange peel and cinnamon. The youngest, just 25 and newly sober, placed a small bouquet of wildflowers beside Marian's plate without a word. The same wine glass Brooke once tried to take from her sat by her hand, its rim slightly chipped, but whole. Marian had kept it, not as a relic of humiliation, but as a monument to survival. She raised her glass not in toast, but in recognition. "This table didn't always feel like mine," she said, voice low and even. "But I carved it back, inch by inch, not for revenge, for peace." There was a pause. Then slow, honest applause. Outside the patio doors, the garden had begun to bloom again. Roses in deep red, bright yellow, and one stubborn ivory bush that refused to die. Marian named that one Eleanor I. It leaned toward the sun. Just like she did. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel watched. She felt seen. She didn't need to be heard. She was home.